Hello, I am Felipe Montoya. I am one of the co-founders of eduNEXT, and I am thrilled to be speaking in this conference about AI in edX, specifically about building an extensibility framework for innovation.
All right, folks, we're getting started. Please welcome Juan and Felipe Montoya. They are the co-founders of eduNEXT, a company that has made enormous contributions to the edX community over the years. And they have a new venture, Human to Human, which they will talk about more. So please take it away.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. So happy to be here this time around. Yes, our talk today is called AI in edX, building an extensibility framework for innovation. I appreciate that you guys selected this track in particular over some seriously interesting alternatives as well. So we're entering a new era. I want to start with this framing. We're entering a new... Can it be a little louder on my end or the system? I'll try to make it a little louder on my end. Right, no problem. Thanks for advising that. Right, so I want to frame it this way. We're entering a new era. Hopefully that's clear for everybody. And it is the era of the chatbot. Is it not? Is it crazy? You see chatbots everywhere. This is the era of the chatbot. No, it's not. Of course, it's not the era of the chatbot. It feels like it sometimes. It looks like it. There's chatbots everywhere. It's true. But we're arguing it's not the era of the chatbot. And I don't think I could have had a better framing than the previous keynote speaker. Like, that was awesome for this talk. Like, if you have this mindset, if you just bring that mindset into this talk, and so it's not the era of the chatbot, but it's an era, and it's a new era coming. So I appreciate a lot the speaker by Professor Pratsky for that. So we're going to tap into that mindset and into all those concepts and things and trends that she mentioned. And I don't even expect to be as articulated and as, that was a fantastic presentation, but I will do my best to convey a few points that tap into that and echo some of those things. So it's the era of a number of things. It's a complex era because it's an era of multiple dimensions, perhaps multiple eras at the same time. It's an era of generative AI that is very smart by any measure that you can imagine, by any benchmark. The smartness, the intelligence of these systems are getting better and better by the hour, by the minute, by the week, whatnot. This is a plot of one of those metrics in the last only 18 months or so. This one in particular is GPQA, which is based on PhD level questions that hopefully are not part of the training set, but still you can see the progress. And there is a lot of debate. You don't know if there's an asymptotic limit to it. If at some point it will stop being smart, maybe not. Anyone can have their own opinions. But even if it stops like growing in intelligence, we already have enough capability there for significant transformations across the board. So that's one thing, super smart. The second thing is multimodal. This was not like, shouldn't take that for granted, right? It takes input in so many different formats. It reads, it can also hear, like in real time. And it can see, it has vision to some extent. And for the output, it can output, of course, text, but it can also output voice, also in real time with very little latencies. It can output sounds, it can output music, it can output images, videos, you name it, code, whatnot. So basically, I'll frame it as it speaks all the languages of learning. Not all the languages, which it does, but all the languages of learning as well. It is proficient in all those channels that we have been using for millennia to learn. Then it's also the era of one of the characterizations of this new era is the era of AI agents. And this is a new thing. It's a new mindset completely. It's a new kind of technology. It's not really a tool. Some people say it's the first technology that is not a tool. It is actually a goal-seeking thing, a goal-seeking entity. It operates on a loop. It perceives, reasons, acts, evaluates, and continues on and on with this loop. And all those abilities, ability to perceive, to reason, to act, and to evaluate, are improving by the week, by the day. So what happens with that? What happens with we give this AI agent, or one good AI agent, the goal of make sure that I learn something. make sure that I acquire knowledge. I don't even know how that is going to look like, but it's going to be super interesting. And even before you do that, you go all the way and give the agent all the agency of my learning process. Even before that, it can provide a lot of scaffolding, like reducing my cognitive load or strengthening metacognition processes or raising motivation, accountability, you name it. There are a number of ways, reducing even administrative friction. So there's a number of ways an agentic, goal-seeking piece of technology can really deliver a change. Another dimensions, like 6 dimensions of it. This is the era of AI generated, and I would add, based on the keynote this morning, co-created complex things like code. I take code as an example, computer code. That can be contentious in some cases for some of the developers, but the important point is AI is capable of producing this really complex structure that are just beyond the text representation of it. Beyond that, they mean something. In the case of code, they mean a logic process that is going to run on some computer afterwards. And I can co-create it with it. So it will output a lot of, like a draft version of it, but I can continue with, like in the canvas mode in OpenAI, continue iterating and make it better alongside the AI. So think of, and vibe coding as well is part of the thing, right? I can just describe what I want and then it frames it for me and then I can continue evolving it and co-creating it. So think of the learning pathways as some other example of complex structures that underneath mean something really, really complex that AIs are capable of building and producing. Think of learning simulations, think of learning games, think of any kind of assessment activity. I mean experimentation with learners. Some of you probably and ourselves as well have been playing with some of these tools already. We have been vibe coding extensions to OpenEdX, JS input examples, Python, evaluated problems, things like that. And it's interesting what happens. It gives you a lot of things. It doesn't necessarily give you a perfect product ready to be deployed into courses, not necessarily, but it gives you velocity, iteration, creative affordances. Now you're empowered to go and do more interesting and complex things. And it democratized this expertise. So those are the foundations for a lot of adaptivity. Right, so let's think, is the era of AI native analytics? So that's a whole new thing. It took me quite a few months, I would accept, to understand what native analytics meant, native AI analytics meant. But it's basically, I will describe it as a shift from descriptive to predictive and then prescriptive. So it's a shift from being a thermometer that knows the warm and cool temperature in the room to a thermostat, right? Something that adapts, takes measures and then adapts and then makes controls loops so that my expected outcome happens. And there's already scientific evidence of these things being incorporated and delivering results. And it's the era of a lot of challenges in the realm of AI governance and trust, data privacy or privacy, security, fairness and bias control, transparency. All those are conversations that as a society we need to have and are happening right now and are complex. Nobody knows the answer. So we're going to be figuring it out. Remember I said at the beginning, we're entering that era. That entering process might take us a number of years. But that's what happens. It will likely take us 10 years. I remember the year of the MOOC concept, and I equated to this year. They were saying this is the year of the agent. The year of 2025 is the year of the agent. I like that Andrej Karpathy mentioned that it's the decade of the agent. Don't think that it's going to take us 1 year to figure it out. It's going to take us a lot more longer than that. But it's going to be very powerful. And the conversations we're having today about this have long-lasting impact. That's my important point. Right, so transformations, the thing I get out of this is transformations are going to happen across the world. And in online education, of course, it's not different, and it's particularly prone to transformations happening. So you could mention that these trends are resetting learner expectations already, or even platform economies. But the most important point I want to drive today is those transformations would not necessarily be for the better. We could be worse off with all these technologies in terms of online education in a few years. So that's a big concern and big challenge, I hope, for some of you. So we need to support we as a technology, as a piece of technology, OpenEdX platform, we need to support our users, which are our adopters, if you will, which are educators and administrators, open edX platform adopters. What are the challenges they are facing? Those are the target users or adopters we have in mind, right? So I have here two blocks. The first one in blue, more targeting the educator side of things. So you have, they should be concerned about quality and accuracy, reliability of the outputs, academic integrity, of course, cheating, learner overdependence, like spoiling learners into like degrading their brains or their learning abilities with AI, bias and fairness of the outputs, and evidence-based. This is very important, like making sure that things actually work based on evidence. And then on the administrative side of things, there's also a number of challenges as well. Whether or not this goes right or wrong in terms of evidence and outcomes for the learning process, on the administrative side, they need to be concerned about privacy and data usage, the cost or licensing or the cost predictability of it, the budgetary side of things, the workload for faculty in terms of reskilling and learning how to use all these tools effectively, especially as they evolve so quickly, and all that technical challenge of integration and continued support of all these tools if they're going to be transformative. So, okay, so that would be the challenge. But I want to spend a couple of minutes before handing it over to give a word to the skeptics, because I know there are some in the room and reasonably concerned about some of the biggest challenges here. There are unresolved challenges for sure. So there is reliability challenges, so you see hallucinations sometimes still. There's the academic integrity problem. You can think about equity and access as being a problem, or even job displacement. If you're thinking about a societal transformation of this dimension in such a small period of time, you could have a lot of job consequences. Or maybe you think, no, this is a market-driven hype. They have putting so many $1 billion into this that they try to make it look bigger than it is. Anyhow, all those concerns are reasonable, and I want to address those. And my proposal here is, in terms of what to do if you're one of those skeptics, is basically don't withdraw from the conversation. Be part of it, right? Be part of the co-design. Let's build this thing with your inputs in mind. Let's help us set the agenda for the research. Help us, like, we're all concerned about keeping humans in command. If we're going to lose the war against AI, this is probably the early stages of the resistance. But let's participate in that conversation, right? And the governance that needs to be built into all these processes. But hopefully, my sense, I'm not sure about everybody, but my sense of the general couple of past days is that there are some skepticism, of course, but mostly we're excited about it. As a community and as edtech industry and the universities I've spoken to are mostly excited about the potential upsides. So we're coming here with a proposed approach, a very concrete thing that we want to propose for the open edX community specifically. As mentioned, and as some of you know, we've been players in this community for a number of years, and I think we've learned collectively some very important lessons that we can apply. This is the moment to apply the lessons we've learned for the past years. So it's our goal here with this proposal is try to address or try to go towards these three dimensions, these three directions, and I'm going to explain them or break them down by the profile of the ultimate beneficiary of them. So we have educators. For educators, we want them to be able to plug in whatever AI tool comes in the future easily into the OpenEdX platform. We don't even know how those tools are going to look like in the midterm. 6 months from now, we don't really know how those tools are going to look like. But they're going to be there. And we want, or I want these educators to be able to plug them up really easily in the OpenEdX platform in order to experiment with them, in order to validate if they work or not, so that we don't accept them like as a dogma that it works because it has AI, but instead like challenge its efficacy and everything around it. For learners, we want to like get them the best learning experience possible, which means many things, but one of the things is everything that we deliver as part of the OpenEdX platform, as part of the course, as part of the experience that we deliver, but also the experience that they get from a combination of what we deliver to them and what their AI tool of their choice delivered to them as well, because that's completely outside of our control. In the future, learners are going to have their own learning companions with them, and the learning companions is going to have a lot of agency to like decide whether or not the course was good or to help the learner navigate the course. But keep in mind this, those learning companions are outside of our control. So we're not building those. We're building the platform that the learners are are finding their learning at, hopefully. And final dimension is for the developers. So we're looking for making the platform the place where potentially innovators, developers will choose as the place to build their innovations for a number of reasons. One, because it's easy and fast to do it. They don't have time. This is a race. If they're in the market, they need to come up with materialization of their ideas really quickly. But inside a platform that already exists and already has deployments, because they need to test it with real users. So it needs to be like easy, simple for them to build, and it needs to be simple to deploy to millions of learners, and also simple to iterate and improve. That's the goal for developers. So how does this look like from the future? Like, I took a trip down the line of time, what you call it, I don't know what you call it, and I brought some like news articles or news outlets that reflect how this looks if we are successful. Here's a few examples. So in the printed paper, for some reason, I have an article that says that a data sovereign Swiss university decided to run on-device learner companions that support learners that are taking the courses on their OpenX platform. That's awesome that they could do that. Keep in mind of the keyword, like it's data sovereign, and it's important, and it's on device. On device is not for everybody. Running AI on the edge is probably not for everybody, but for this Swiss university, it was required or necessary or desirable, so they did that. That's great. The second one is a Ghanaian startup decided to combine OpenEdX with the latest open source AI agent to slash down their cost for the business model. That's great. It's great that they could do that. The third one is the results of a survey that I got in the future that surveyed a number of students in order to identify the reasons why they were choosing courses in edX rather than in Coursera, because the difference was huge. Like, edX was overtaking Coursera really hard. And the survey found that the reason why is because their learning companions often suggest edX courses. And they feel like when they take a course in edX or on an OpenEdX platform, the experience they get with their learning companions is great, as opposed to perhaps Coursera or some other tool that doesn't have that much advanced capabilities for the learning companion. And finally, a news in LinkedIn that says that a developer in Sao Paulo just built a course content review and update agent that makes sure that your course content always have up-to-date references, and it's run overnight over thousands of courses and works really well for large initiatives. So those are some of the stories that I hope we can build the foundations to support in the future together. But there are a lot of challenges. This community is not easy. These technologies are not easy, and this community is particularly outstanding in many ways, but it has big challenges. Diversity, I mean it as a challenge in the sense that it's hard to agree on what's the way forward, right? There's a lot of views, different viewpoints, different stakeholders, different areas of focus. So we need to overcome the challenges and make it into an opportunity. That diversity, that kind of diversity is one of our values, and it's one of the things that enrich us. So we need to deal with that. Velocity, this goes really fast, and we as a community, we don't go that fast. It's hard for us, and for so many reasons, but it's a reality. I'm not sure that we're enough used to experimentation as we should be, and that's a challenge because this will require experimentation. Nobody really knows what works and what doesn't. So the success will come if enough experimentation is being enabled. So we need to struggle with that. Inaction is going to be a big challenge because it has happened and it can happen, and this kind of conversation could have started last year, but it didn't really, or it didn't take off. So at least, so if we don't really actively do something, we may not get anywhere. And there's constraints, of course, budgetary constraints, focus constraints, expertise constraints. So there's a lot of challenges we have to address. So let me wrap it up with the actual proposal. We have just a simple two-sided proposal for this community. One is to start and really support and step behind a collective effort to have this conversation, intentionally focused conversation about AI inside the OpenX platform. And I don't exactly know how that should look, but I think it should be PPP, pluggable, progressive, and principled. We need to have some principles in it. We need to progressively build it. And it can be optional, it can be pluggable. You don't need to have it necessarily. But those are interesting characteristics, but that needs to come out of a community conversation. And the second part of the proposal is we need to start building. It's not a theoretical conversation. We could just ask ChatGPT to draw a 100-page document about this and be done with it. But that means nothing if we don't build something that actually enables somebody to do something. So we want to propose that we build together a framework for AI extensibility. That's the title of the talk. A framework for AI extensibility that sets the foundations to enable as many experimentation and innovation as possible for learning on the OpenEdX platform. We have good examples for both of those proposal dimensions, if you will. We have good examples of things that worked before. I will mention for the conversation, I will mention what happened with analytics. We struggled for years, if you remember, with the analytics piece of the platform. Many of us providers built our own approach to it. And then we came together. It took us a while, but we came together, articulated a good conversation around a joint vision for analytics, and then it happened progressively. And then external funding and projects happened to make it a reality. And now we have a good analytics platform that is also extensible and allows us to dive deep into the data that the platform collects. And for the AI framework for extensibility, we have done things in the past like the events extensibility and the UI extensibility framework recently presented their latest findings. So I think those are good footsteps to follow in the way the community works, like reasonably well articulated with the way the community works for us to follow in this case, AI extensibility framework. So I want to hand it over for the second part to my coworker, partner, brother, and everything in between, Felipe Montoya, to dive deeper into what we think at this point in time that means. But of course, as mentioned, it's an open conversation. Thank you.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me all right? Voices, volume is good? Okay, so we have brought extensibility frameworks in this community before. Juan just mentioned them. Hooks extension was one of them. UI recently, one of them as well. So we think that we are in this space where we need, again, to build an extensibility framework. And we know we have this dichotomy of like the technical challenges versus the teaching challenges. And all the teaching challenges, we saw them in the keynote, and I'm not going in there. But even then, developers have also challenges. Like we come out of this keynote and we come out of this presentation saying, yeah, I'm going to build great AI extensions and I'm going to build like fantastic experiences. Okay, now how do I go about it? Like if I use all the cloud code tools and Copilot and whatnot, this is still an architectural challenge. This is still something that needs to be maintained. So all of those challenges are still there. Like the infrastructure is complex. There are a bazillion LLM models. Which one do I choose? What happens if I create an extension and then someone else comes to me with like, I have my own model. I want to plug my own model in there. There are so many AI frameworks these days that it's difficult to keep track of even what's like winning the marketing battle and what's getting used versus what's being forgotten. And the usual challenges that we get in this community, maintenance, big one, like, is this going to be supported on the next release? Do I have to redevelop the whole thing after TIC comes out? And extensibility. It does just what I wanted, but I want to change this little bit. And then I don't. I can't, or I have to fork, and then we're back to square one. So we started a little bit with a backwards design. What are our principles for the kind of extensibility framework that we want? We want it to be pluggable, not prescriptive, and by that I mean we don't want to tell you what to do with AI. We only want to give you tools so that you can decide what to do with AI. It has to be model and provider agnostic. I don't care if you're using JAMA or JAMA, OpenAI, cloud, whatever, your own internal university model. It has to work with that. It also has to integrate across the OpenEdX services. It can't be that it's just LMS facing, but it doesn't work with the studio. It must not fail if you have e-commerce installed or these sort of things. And we've learned already from other experiences, it has to be well documented, otherwise no one's going to use it to implement anything. And we also want it to be observable. So we want to connect this with the analytics that we have. We want to have a good experience for audit or logging, and we want this to export XAPI events so you can put them in your LRS, as we are doing with all tools at this point. And we also want to have tooling. So those are pretty hefty design principles that are not going to be coming easily, but we have good experience in this community to make it possible. So with that, we have we think the way to approach this is to create some different building blocks. And I'm calling them a backbone, robust SDK, and then 4 layers of like the actual AI stuff that we want to build with. So let's look at these building blocks in detail. First of all is the SDK. The goal is to enable experimentation. That's what we want to put out there. We want educators and developers to be able to try stuff out. So we absolutely need an SDK, and we need good documentation. We're getting started guides. I was recently talking with one of the developers of the UI extension framework, and he was like, I need to be able to copy some code from the PR, paste it in my code, and it has to work. This is the sort of experience that we think will actually enable people to get experimenting. And we know that we also need we need to use the best practices if we want to maintain this in the long term. So all of that, also the things like transforming your logs to XAPI, that sort of thing. We don't want to waste developers' time doing the thing that everyone needs to be doing every time. So we want to build all that from the start and then let them work. That's for the developers, but we also need for the educators and for the people running the course and the faculty and staff. We need some central service for managing some of this. And we have some ideas, not necessarily all of them. That's why this needs to be a conversation. But things like having audit trails to see what happened. What was the student talking with the AI about? Was the answer coming from the student or from the AI? This sort of thing. We need to track usage and probably put the capacity to have some limits there. We've all seen like what happens if you, or I've seen a few examples of people that let the agent run wild with a credit card number, and it bought a bunch of stuff that wasn't necessarily what the user wanted. And we need to solve issues like personally identifiable information. Like that cannot go into the system, but we don't want to be solving this over and over. Also, usual configuration, monitoring, being able to put like different pieces of a puzzle together in a way that is maybe unique, but that makes sense for your course, organization, institution. That would be like a backbone service. And then the layers. First, we need to solve for input. Be that something gets triggered from an OpenEDX event or filter, something happened in the course, in the life cycle of a student that triggers the actual activation of LLM call or a agent starting to work on your behalf. We need to be able to get input from users, text and most likely also audio. So with something with like speech to text. It was STT, not SST. Manual triggering, just click a button that says, get this AI started for me. But also we are working in the age of agents, so we need to have agents be able to call that thing. If the, what did you call it, the study body is going to be triggering those events for me, then it needs to have a space to connect. So those are all things that we need to build at OpenEDX to make it more like amicable, make it easier to get those, like to get the students working with the AI extensions that you're building easily. Now we have a second layer that would be like orchestration. And we want to enable simple but also sophisticated AI patterns. So simple would be you do something, it calls the LLM, it gives you an answer. That would be like a direct pattern, just like input, process, output. But then we have something like multi-step information retrieval. So your AI process goes and checks something in a different university service maybe, or it checks the internet. It does this sort of external calls. Same for augmentation, like information augmentation workflows. And even then I'm starting to get into like deeper possibilities, like using famous frameworks like LangChain, or having decision loops, or even switching agents in the middle of a workflow. Whenever the user had like completed one goal from one agent, it gets like transferred to a different agent with a different goal. That sort of thing, that would go all into an orchestration layer. Then we also need to build already like processing functions that you get out of the box, like things that capture OpenEDX specific information. And I have some examples there, like getting in a semantic way, like a markdown way, all the course outline, or what is the status of this student in this particular course? What's the last unit that they saw? Get me like the original XML of the course. Those sort of things, like the information that's built into OpenEDX that now we need to extract and be able to send to the LLM process. Those would be, it was mentioned at the keynote briefly, the MCP servers, for those that are like into working with cloud already and building tools and functions. Those would be all those servers. We don't want to build them over and over again. We want them to be in a plugin that you can just put in and have them already. And then we have also like the space, so you can code your functions to call upon different services. You have a user service at your university, or you have a specific content service, or you're recommending courses, but you need to go fetch them from somewhere else. This sort of information needs to be processed and calculated and also presented in a semantic way, so the agent or the LLM can do something about that. And then we have all the heavy work of having LLM calls, template models, storing those templates, doing prompt sanitization, those sort of building blocks that as developers, we don't want to be writing over and over again, and we probably want to collaborate and make them stronger. That's all the processing layer. To finally come to the actuators layer, what the user receives at the other end. So this would be a lot of spaces for the agents or the LLM processes to talk back to the student, or to write some answers or create course content. We're thinking this goes in the LLM, the LMS and Studio and other services. So if you're having like AI workflow that helps you write content, then this should suggest it right there in a Studio, so you can just accept the suggestion and continue. So this would spawn like all the projects that we're doing, and we definitely don't think that we have we have to start with all of them. But imagine if we're going to produce or consume things from libraries, if we're going to have the LMS speak like in real voice to a student, those sort of things, those are generic functions that we want to build, so that you only have to say like, yeah, this is going to speech, instead of having to go and rebuild the integrations. That is all the things, like all the architecture blocks that I think we need. And now for the most opinionated part, that is how we get this to work in this community, how we make it real. And we have an idea of what an implementation strategy could be. The first is that thanks to all the architectural investment we've done over the last 5 years, we are actually in a very good position now. And I think most of that, if not all of what I just said, can be written outside of the core. Like, it doesn't require us to go and create and change the core for us to build this. So we propose to start with an Open edX plugin that serves as an enabler plugin. In your platform, you would install this and then install your own plugin that extends classes, and it's mostly doing like the pieces of code that you want. So you get this idea from the educators. I want to create this complex scenario, and then you get the building blocks from this plugin and get to work. Then, with some of that, we need to deliver documentation. We need to deliver a lot of documentation and a lot of examples. Make it so that we can have some of those more direct patterns, like what I said about a chatbot. Just give me some question that I'll pass to LLM and comes back. This has to be an example that is like a 5-minute work. For anyone that's experienced with Open edX and has a tutor environment, it should be just install this, put some pieces together, and be done with it. And then also get started on works like showing off how more complex work would be accomplished with the same building blocks. And then, and only then, start going back and then do more evolution and dive deeper into what more functions we need, and what, let's build out a few semantic adapters, a few MCP servers, and then let's finish up all the way until documentation and good examples, and then we come back and write more MCPs. That's sort of the most realistic way that I can see, or that we can see, that we can bring this to life in the community as it is right now in 2025. The good thing is we have this. The bad part is we are already 1 year too late in this conversation, but we don't want to be 2 years too late. So with that, I'll finish with a call to action that is participate in this conversation. We are, maybe yesterday and today has been loaded with birds of feathers. We just created a working group of AI extensibility with a charter and all that. I think the window of opportunities is open right now, but it won't be open forever. There is like a train that's going on, and we need to get on it. And even though we don't have all the answers, we still want to have the questions. So with that, I'd like to invite everyone to either give us your questions, the pain points that you've already faced, and the ideas you have for implementing this. It's not necessarily a set project. We're not promising that we are going to deliver it. We're putting this out there so that as a community we can all together get it built.
Folks, it's time for questions. Please raise your hands and wait until you get the box so that we can get it on the recording. I'm actually not going to throw this around because of various incidents.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Felipe and Juan. Very inspiring. Do you already have some really realistic action point for all of us? There is a lot of providers here, like we are, like you are. So I think it's the moment also for action, really action point. Maybe it's also a place to start with, not only mentioning working group and then see you next year. Like,
yeah.
Very, very practical. Maybe you have something in mind.
Yeah, certainly. Tap into what Felipe just said about Marco organized a Birds of Air yesterday, and we discussed a little bit and started coming up with the principles of what would be a working group about that. So a super immediate action steps, I would say, join that conversation. It's happening in Slack right now, or in the hallways. And also maybe we could set up, I don't know if Marco is here. Ah, yes, you're here. I don't know if we can set up like a in-person meeting for tomorrow or Friday or something around that topic. I think it's a good opportunity since we're all here and 10 or 15 people in the room could advance that conversation a lot, like after all that.
From the more technical standpoint, I would say we need to get building, and what we really don't want is that each of you gets like tasked with building something AI during the next year, and we don't have a compelling vision for where to push together. So I definitely don't want to see 5 different mini frameworks of AI next year. I would like us to have all pushed towards one half a framework, and then everyone built on top of that framework. That's what we're aiming for.
Just one additional thing I would say. So I actually missed the conversation that happened, I think, earlier this morning. There was like an AI in the classroom conversation. And it's a good example of a thing we want to make sure we don't miss out on in the next year, which is, yes, we've created this AI extensions working group, but the conversations that need to happen are both in the product and technology space, which we've been talking a bunch about today. But as the talk called out, the educator side is just as important. So the conversation that John and others had this morning is critical and needs to be kept active. Sometimes we have conversations in our ecosystem and working groups and others where conversation veers too technical or too sort of into the educator side or whatever. And as audiences, we don't kind of stick around over the course of a year or like outside of conferences. So we need a way to have both of those conversations be moving forward.
I mean, you can throw it. Yeah. Oh no, it's not breaking yet.
It's just a comment as this working group gets going. But one thing that I would like to kind of bring into a conversation like this is it's clear that we need a framework and some governance and extensibility. What it would be a shame to happen is for this layer of abstraction to one of the reasons that AI has taken off so much. Whether we've extracted enough value out of it is another question, but one of the reasons AI has taken off so much is because it's so accessible to educators. They can talk to it, right? And that's very empowering. One thing that I would like to keep in mind with a conversation like this is not to put up so many layers of abstraction and technology that it no longer feels accessible to the end person, which is the educator and the student. So not a question, just that's like, my kind of 2 cents about where this conversation can go, but thanks for bringing it up and leading the, some charge on it.
Yeah, thanks. If I may add something to that, I think that's a fantastic comment, and I think we as technologists, we feel like everything must be configurable and modular and settings, and it tends to become really complicated. And for some of these things, we actually need to like switch gears in our mindset and make it like super easy to work with. Like something that you take it, it's working, like your plugin is installed. That was the only technical action that you needed. Everything else can be code that's stored in the database or things that you interact with the chatbot to tell it how the workflow should be. That sort of thing, that would be the absolute ideal goal. That's what we want. Now we need to do it.
I think we have time for a couple more quick questions. Yeah, so my question was just a comment on the extensibility aspect of this more than the AI specific aspect of it. I think just understanding what parts of the platform we're missing from an extensibility standpoint, where we need more extensibility to be able to enable these AI experiences, having a clear outline of that would be great. So if you have documentation of some of the discovery you've done around that as what's needed, I know if you're working on a plugin, you probably have, and you could share that out, that would be wonderful.
We don't have yet a proof of concept, and that was not our goal for this presentation, because again, it's not like something eduNEXT brings to the table and now we go sell it to everyone. The idea is to bring a community together to build the tool that we need. And from our spikes, like design spikes, what we have seen is that we are actually very good architecturally speaking to build this. Like we haven't found something that is a blocker for us to get working on this as a plugin right now.
Well, that's exciting news. Cool.
My question is more around the least amount of effort needed to enable experimentation. And while I totally understand this as like an approach for any particular experiment to operationalize itself, I'm wondering, like, I hypothesize it is quite easy to say set up an MCP if you just have good APIs and good API documentation, and you can feed that into an LLM, and it can set up the MCP for you. So my question is around, like, how much of this do you think is really necessary in order to enable experimentation versus like subsequent steps after that to operationalize something?
I would say, from the technical standpoint, we mostly need, like, the absolute minimum would be, where is this? Yeah, like something like that direct pattern. So we get some input from the user, we call an LLM, and we show some results. And for that, we need basically a small processing layer that can do those calls, and the input and output functions, which are UI slots for the most part. So a small plugin that can bring 2 UI slots into the mix and one API, maybe with one of those semantic adapters to get the course outline. And that's like a minimum experiment that you could be running.
All right, folks, this session is over. We're out of time. However, I'm sure there's much interest in continuing this conversation. So Felipe, where should we go next to talk more about this?
I don't know the specifics, but we have a conversation. Yeah. That would be a good place to start.
Okay, there's another Birds of a Feather this afternoon. Everyone will look for it. And yeah, thank you very much. And please give them another hand.